Let us continue our discussion of one-sided tests. But before that, I remind you that Monday is a holiday. Okay, so right. So remember what we were discussing. We want to test. So we have a IID normal sample, and we want to test the null hypothesis that mu is some given number mu naught, as opposed to the alternative hypothesis, which is that mu is greater than mu naught. So this kind of situation will have many applications, as I will show you presently. And for this, we had derived the one-sided significance level alpha test, which is that you take the sample mean subtracted by mu naught multiplied by square root of the number of samples divided by the known standard deviation, and you check whether it is less than or equal to z alpha or not. So if it is less, then you accept, otherwise it is. And you can do this also using the p-value. Okay. So now let us compute the type 2 error for such a test. So let us calculate. So the OC curve curve for this test is beta of mu, which is the probability that the true mean is mu, which may not be equal to mu naught, of accepting h naught. Right. So this is what we said. Sorry. So if you look here, we accept h naught if this condition is satisfied. So this is the probability under mu of square root of n by sigma x power minus mu naught is less than or equal to z alpha. Okay. So this is what we need to calculate. So let z be square root of n x power minus mu naught. Minus mu by sigma. This is a standard normal random variable because the true mean is mu. Right? So notice this is mu naught and this is mu. Right? So I mean, the only difference between this calculation and the two-sided OC curve is simply that we are not taking a mod and we are not having alpha by 2. We have so now what I'm going to do is I want mu instead of mu naught here, so I'll add and subtract mu. So therefore beta of mu is the probability. Now I'll talk in terms of z. So I'll remove this subscript over here. So I have added and subtracted mu, so I get z. And then I add a mu, I have added a mu, and there's this residual mu naught. So I have plus square root of n mu minus mu naught by sigma is less than or equal to z alpha, small z. Right? Okay. So this is the same as saying the probability of z is less than or equal to z alpha. I'll switch the sign here. So plus square root of n by sigma mu naught minus mu. Right? And this is the probability for a standard normal random variable, and so being less than or equal to some value, and so by definition this is the phi function at that value. So z alpha, right later, square root of n mu naught minus mu plus. So as so which so I should say which, since phi is an increasing function which decreases as mu increases. So as mu increases, this number becomes smaller, and phi is an increasing function. Okay, this point will we will use very soon. Okay. So notice again, as for the two-sided test, that beta of mu naught is phi of, when you set mu equal to mu naught, this goes away, so you get phi of z alpha, but by definition this is 1 minus alpha. So at the, if the true mean is equal to the mean that you guessed for the null hypothesis, then you should always get 1 minus alpha. So this gives, yeah. Okay, so maybe I should say here, which is the probability of a type 2 error. And as I said before, it depends on mu, right? So this value will depend. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay. So so let me make another remark. So what we have done in this one-sided test, so let me go back to last lecture notes. So we are testing the null hypothesis, which says that mu is equal to mu naught, as compared to the alternative hypothesis that mu is greater than mu naught. But what if you want to test mu is less than or equal to mu naught versus mu greater than mu naught, right? This is a natural question. So let us answer that. So suppose we want to test the null hypothesis mu is less than or equal to mu naught versus H1, the alternative hypothesis, which is the same. So it's negation, right? So it turns out that the same test continues to work at significance level alpha. So that is, so let me just copy, rewrite this line, or maybe I can copy paste it. Oh, sorry. Okay. Let me try to match up the lines. Okay, that one. Okay, I'll have a next slide. Okay, yeah. Okay, so why is that? So we will have the exact same business as before, and the exact same criteria as before, and the reason for that is the following. So to see this, we need to show that the probability of a type 1 error which is i.e. rejecting H0 when it is true continues to be less than or equal to alpha at most alpha. Right? So that's all we need to show. I mean, that's how we define the critical region, remember? So, if you see here, the critical region was defined by saying that the probability of a type 1 error is alpha. If this is continues to be less than or equal to alpha, we are okay. So therefore, we need to compute the probability under assuming mu is the true mean of square root of n by sigma x bar minus mu naught greater than z alpha for mu less than or equal to mu naught. Right, so let's check. So this is the probability of rejection. Actually, I have it over here. This quantity is greater than z alpha, sorry. But this by definition is exactly equal to 1 minus beta mu. This was the power function of the test. Okay. But we know, but we have just seen that beta of mu increases as mu decreases, and beta of mu naught is 1 minus alpha, and so we want mu to be less than or equal to mu naught. So beta of mu is therefore mu is greater than or equal to 1 minus alpha for mu. Again, for mu less than or equal to mu naught, and so 1 minus beta mu, if I take this over this side and take this alpha over this side, is less than or equal to. Okay. So thus, this is what we needed to show. So this is the probability of type 1 error, and this continues to be less than or equal to alpha. So probability of type 1 error is less than or equal to alpha. So in this, when we take mu to be less than or equal to alpha. Okay, this is the point. Okay, so the null hypothesis where did it go? So the null hypothesis here, if the alternative hypothesis is that mu is greater than mu naught, the null hypothesis either mu equal to mu naught or mu less than or equal to mu naught, we have the same exact test. Okay, this simplifies our life a little. Okay. All right, so let's do an example. This is this seems like a simple application, but I want to stress an important point here. So this is again from the book. So suppose cigarettes, and this has a practical application also. So, and you will see why the one-sided test is so important. Don't know. So cigarettes on the market, let's say, have an average of 1.6 milligrams of nicotine. Okay, so you see, nicotine, I mean, I think it's well established that nicotine causes cancer. So, you know, so far, for whatever reason, you have this much of nicotine on average per cigarette. I mean, of course, you cannot have exactly so much. So this is a random number, and you know, we can assume that these are normally distributed, and the mean is this, and they have some variance. And it is known that the standard deviation is 0.8 milligram. Okay. So I mean 1.6 milligram of nicotine per cigarette, right? And suppose that it is known that this is the standard deviation is 0.8. Now you would wonder, well, how do you know this number? I mean, this is a practical problem. So of course you can ask, well, how do you know the standard deviation? And one way one could derive this is by assuming that the amount of nicotine depends only on the amount of tobacco in the cigarette and not on the method by which the cigarette is prepared. So, you know, so then by from past data, you know, you have a fairly good idea of the standard deviation, and let's assume that it's this value. Okay. Now, so a new cigarette is launched. So a new cigarette on the market claims to have an average of 1.54 milligrams. Okay, so I mean this is an advertising gimmick, of course. They say they have less nicotine, but you know it gives you, I mean, it gives you the same kind of pleasure that regular cigarette is supposed to give. Oh, sorry, no, sorry. Claims to have an average of less than 1.6. Sorry. So they claim that this is less, and this so 20 cigarettes, 20 of these new cigarettes are tested. And the average turns out to be 1.54. Content is 1.54. Okay. Now so the question is, what can be said at the 5% significance? Okay. So we know alpha. So I mean, if you just stare at this formula, we know alpha. Mu naught is so we are okay. So what is the null hypothesis? Okay. So let me ask all of you. So so here you can. I've read the question out to you. So what do you think is the null hypothesis?
Sir, that the amount of nicotine is actually less than 1.6 milligram.
Yeah, but that's correct. So how would you say it in, I mean, in the terminology that we have been using so far? I mean, H naught I have been writing Yeah, so right. So okay, so let me not. So let's say H naught is mu is less than 1.6 milligram. That's what you would like to say, right? I mean, yes, Aditya, were you saying something?
Yes, sir, that's what I was going to say.
Sorry, you broke up.
Yes, sir, that's what I was to say.
Okay, good. So this seems like the most natural assumption. I mean, this seems correct, right? I mean, if you read the question, as Aditya said, and I'm sure most of you would have the same, would have answered the same. But actually, this is not the correct thing to do.
Oh.
So, and let me explain why. This is a subtle point. So here, let me write maybe in red. Subtle point. Okay. So what is the point? So when we talked about the null hypothesis at the beginning of this discussion, or not today, but when we started talking about hypothesis testing, what did we say? We have a null hypothesis, and we have some data. All we cannot say whether the null hypothesis is true or not, right? We can only say if the data are consistent with the null hypothesis. Right? So in other words, what I'm saying is that acceptance of the null hypothesis is a weaker statement than rejection. In other words, if you accept the null hypothesis, it's not such a big deal. I mean, you are saying that okay, it's consistent, but you're not endorsing it so much. Whereas by rejecting the null hypothesis, you are saying that, you know, there is some serious flaw in the null hypothesis. I mean, unless something is really off, the null hypothesis is not true. And this is what the type 1 error says. So the type 1 error, which is at significance level alpha, 5% in this case, is saying that it's very, very unlikely. I mean, if we reject the null hypothesis, we are saying that there's only a 5% chance that we are wrong. Okay. Whereas if we accept the null hypothesis, this probability is much higher.
So isn't our basis for alpha slightly different? Alpha is if the null hypothesis is correct, the probability that we reject it, right?
Yes.
Not the probability that if we've rejected the null hypothesis is correct.
Sorry, what? No. Yes. So what you are saying is we could change this 5% to something stronger, right?
No, sir. Just you said that if we reject the null hypothesis, there's a 5% chance that we're wrong.
Yes.
But would that be saying that given that we rejected it, the probability that it's actually correct is 5%? Whereas the basis for our derivation was given that the null hypothesis is correct, the probability that we rejected is 5%. It's like probability of A given B versus B given A.
No, but this is the same thing, right? I mean, I'm saying that, well, you cannot calculate the other conditional probability because you don't have that information, right? So, I mean, all I'm saying is that there is a lack of symmetry here. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So, it's accepting and rejecting are not on par. Okay.
Okay, sir, I had a doubt about that as well, actually. Like, why are they not on par? Why would this hypothesis testing procedure and calculation, why would it work if we make acceptance a weaker statement, but fail if we make it a stronger statement?
No, because I mean, this is the difference between type 1 error and type 2 error, right? So we calculated type 2 error. This, of course, depends on knowing mu, the true mean.
Okay, right. Type 1.
So there is, Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, as I said, I mean, this is not very imaginative names, type 1 error and type 2 error, but somehow everything, all our, I mean, all our calculations, a priori calculations are based on type 1 error, right? This is how we define the critical region, etc., etc. So somehow the type 1 error is given more prominence, and that is natural because you have a null hypothesis. You have a prior reason for believing that something is true, and you have this data, and all that we are saying for accepting the null hypothesis is consistency. It's whether this data is consistent or not. And and we allow ourselves a lot of freedom for that, and only with 5% probability in this example, we are saying that we reject. So if we reject, we are saying that it's very unlikely, like 5% unlikely, that we were wrong. Okay, so that is
So
the
if I understand correctly, if we got the hypothesis wrong, instead of minimizing the probability of type 1 error, we'd be minimizing the type 2 error.
Right.
Then this is not a mathematical consideration. It's out of our preference whether we should minimize type 1 or type 2.
Exactly.
I had a second question, which is how do we know what we have a prior reason for believing here?
So that depends on the context, right? So here, right. So good. So that's exactly what my point is. So here, so exactly as Raghuram points out, we have to be very careful because we should not accept this new claim of this new cigarette maker without sufficient evidence. Okay, so that's exactly the point. So since, yeah, just let me finish this sentence. So since we should not accept the claim of this new cigarette without sufficient evidence, we should choose the null hypothesis as mu greater than or equal to 1.6 and the alternative hypothesis as mu less than 1.6. In other words, you have heard this phrase that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, right? So if someone is claiming that their cigarettes are really healthier, the government, or whatever regulatory authority should not just accept it with minimal evidence. They should put more emphasis on the fact that the counter could be true. Okay. So
just
yes,
clarify using this using this different null hypothesis, we are increasing the chance that even if the cigarette company is telling the truth, they will be rejected, but that's done in the public interest.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
these are, as Raghuram pointed out, these are non-mathematical considerations, but these are considerations from reality, right? I mean, it is clear that the greater benefit to society is the health of people, and so we should, not accept it on faith. So if we use the other hypothesis, we are in danger of accepting something that is consistent but not really may not really be true. Right? So okay, so let's do the calculation now with this assumption. So now square root of n by sigma x bar minus mu is what? N is 20. Okay, remind you again. We took 20 cigarettes. Standard deviation sigma is 0.8, right? And x bar is 1.54 and mu naught is 1.6. So mu naught 0.8, 1.54 minus 1.6, and this turns out to be approximately minus 0.336. Okay. So the p-value, which is the probability that z is less than minus 0.336, is 0.368, and this is greater than 0.05. Okay, so which means acceptance, which means remember that the p-value is if the p-value is greater than alpha, we accept it. So we should accept H naught, or H naught, which is this one. So which means that so there is evidence supporting the new claim, but it is not strong enough. Okay. So I should say, yes.
How many cigarettes would we have to test for the mean to be 1.54 and our new null hypothesis to actually be rejected?
Well, that you can calculate, no? I mean, you just substitute n here and put equate it to points. I mean, equate the p-value to 0.05, or to equate it to z alpha minus z alpha. Right? So I should also say that I mean, this is the opposite of the one-sided test that we have described, but it's of course easy to see how one would do this. So okay, I should have done this before, I suppose, but yeah. So I mean, so here we have used. Yeah, sorry about that. So the logical flow is a bit messed up, but I'm writing it again. So here we have used the other one-sided test, which is H naught, where mu equal to mu naught or mu less than greater than or equal to mu naught against versus the alternative hypothesis H1 mu less than mu naught, and in the same way, and here so we accept H naught if square root of n by sigma, it's a square root not a delta, x bar minus mu naught is greater than or equal to minus z alpha, and reject if this is less. Okay, sorry, so I should have clarified that. So this, I mean, but if you compute the p-value, then you just have to check against alpha. Okay, so mathematically there is not much there's maybe not so much complication, but one has to think about the context. So it's not one should not, and this also tells you about the dangers of applying just using software packages which will compute these confidence intervals and so on. If you do them just blindly, then you are in danger, because you should really, there is some conceptual understanding that needs to be had. Okay.
Sir, could I ask another question about the choice of null hypothesis?
Sure. Go ahead.
What if instead of the second cigarette company saying that mu less than or equal to 1.6, the first cigarette company had said that mu was greater than 1.6? Would that change the null hypothesis? Or if not the first cigarette company, maybe some public interest court case was brought up and they made this claim.
No, but then it's still in the same flavor, right? One is the negate. So as I said earlier, mu equal to mu naught or mu greater than equal to mu naught have this. We do the same test. So I think it does not matter.
Sorry, sir, I don't understand. If instead somebody claimed mu greater than 1.6, then the claim would become the null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis would still be mu greater than or equal to.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I would say that because because what is our interest? Our interest is having less amount of nicotine, right? That is the lesser the better. That is the principle here. So if our null, if we are okay, if the current thing says it's more than 1.6, we want it to be less than 1.6. Roughly that's what we're saying.
Okay, sir, but then there are not going to be a lot of situations where we have a preference about the outcome of the hypothesis testing, right?
No. Most situations we do have an opinion. I think that is, so this is the typical situation in one-sided tests. So you have, somebody is making a light bulb. He claims that it lasts 200 hours. So you want it to last at least 200 hours, right? You have a preference for longer lasting bulbs, right? Because you don't want to spend money on keep buying bulbs, right? So like that, you have, for example, pollution. You want so less amount of particulates in the, carcinogens in your atmosphere. So we usually do have a preference, and that is precisely the context in which these one-sided tests are applicable. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So as you might have noticed, there is an analogy between confidence intervals and hypothesis testing. In both cases, both the one-sided and two-sided tests, we sort of used our calculations for the confidence intervals. We could rederive it because it's easy. So let's go back to the two-sided test. For the two-sided test, of normal data with sigma known, the 100 1 minus alpha confidence interval for mu was what? It's x bar minus z alpha by 2 sigma by root n to x bar plus z alpha by 2 sigma by root n, right? Where small x bar is the sample mean from data, and in terms of random variables, what we are saying is that the probability of mu belonging to capital X bar minus Z alpha by 2 sigma by root n to capital X bar plus Z alpha by 2 sigma by root n is 1 minus alpha, right? This is how we derive the confidence interval. And replacing mu by mu naught, so let me call this interval I. We have that the probability of mu naught in I, mu naught belonging to I is 1 minus alpha, and so that from there we derive that the significance level alpha test of H naught, which is mu equal to mu naught, versus H1, which is mu not equal to mu naught, its negation, is to reject H naught if mu naught does not belong to I. Right? So that was the conclusion. So you see the intimate connection between this confidence, the kind of confidence intervals that we constructed, and the tests, right? So in the rest of in the following the rest of this chapter, we will apply this idea. We will, apply this general flow of logic, or this general strategy to other tests or to other problems. So remember the kinds of things that we derive the confidence intervals of. We talked about confidence intervals for the mean, where the variance of mean of a normal data when variance is unknown. We talked about difference of two means when the variances are known. Difference of means of two normal data when the variances are known, and the variances are unknown but equal, and also for Bernoulli data. So for each of these cases, we will follow this general approach. Okay. So there are of course some subtleties that need to be taken care of, which I will mention as we go along. So in the next maybe couple of lectures, we will talk about this. Okay. So the next thing was is this case when the t distribution appeared, and this will lead us to the t test. So suppose x1 up to xn is a sample from a normal distribution where both are unknown, where sigma is unknown, so our null hypothesis is that mu is equal to mu naught against the alternative hypothesis, which is that it is not. Okay, and in this case, you remember we don't know the sample variance, sorry, we don't know the true variance. So we had instead used the sample variance. So recall that S squared is 1 by n minus 1 sigma I equal to 1 to n xi minus x bar whole squared is sample variance.
Sir, couldn't it be
Sorry, you are breaking up. Could you?
shouldn't it be sigma is unknown?
Oh, sorry, sorry. Yes, of course. Thanks. Yeah. Right. So sigma is unknown. Sigma known case we have already discussed. Okay. So now recall that we had replaced sigma by s in in this quantity. So square root of n by s x bar minus mu naught. That's what we had constructed. So now our test statistic is t, which is equal to x bar minus put the square root first. So square root of n by s x bar minus mu naught. Okay. So this is a natural statistic, and what is this distributed as, if you remember? Does anybody remember?
T distribution.
T distribution with what parameters?
N minus 1.
That's right. So T is a student T distribution with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. Right. So therefore, now I won't repeat the entire calculation. So, but the idea is that I mean, from the confidence interval calculation. So maybe I'll say that. So from the confidence interval calculation, the probability of this number t sub alpha by 2n minus 1 less than or equal to square root of n by s x bar minus mu is less than, or maybe I should use capitals now because I'm talking about probabilities, is less than or equal to t alpha by 2 n minus 1. This is 1 minus alpha. Right? So, and therefore we can derive the test. So in complete analogy, with the case when sigma is known, the two-sided t-test at significance level alpha is to accept H naught if mod of square root of n by s x bar minus mu is less than or equal to t alpha by 2n minus 1 and reject H naught if this quantity is greater. So this, I mean, this turns out to be the correct, the natural thing to do. So again, we can compute the p-value not in terms of the normal distribution CDF, but in terms of of the Tn minus 1 CDF, not the normal CDF, right? And accept if the p-value is greater than alpha. More than alpha. Okay, so let me do an example from the book again. So this is the example. Again, you know, these are sort of natural examples with practical applications. So a public health official claims that the mean home water use is 350 gallons a day. And this is, of course, not for India. This is a huge number for. Okay, this is American data. So to verify this claim, a study of 20 randomly selected houses was instigated, with the result that the average daily water use of these 20 homes was as follows. And now the question is, do the data contradict the official's claim? So here we don't know the variance. So we do not know sigma. Okay. So the null hypothesis, of course, is that mu is 350, and the alternative hypothesis is mu not equal to 350. This is, and n is 20 houses were selected. Right? Okay, so I have. So let me compute. So I just copy pasted these numbers over here, and I computed the mean. So this is the data, and this is the mean, and the mean is around. So it's exactly this value, which is around 353.8. So from data, x bar or small x bar is 353.8, and I also computed the standard deviation of the data, which is S, sample standard deviation, which is approximately 21.85. Okay, and so our statistic, so t should be square root of n by s x bar minus mu naught, which is square root of 20 by 21.85 times 353.8 minus 350 is a measly 3.8. So this looks like a very good justification. So this turns out to be about. So I did this computation also, and this turns out to be about 0.78. Okay, and so what we need to know. So from tables, we need to compare this with this value. So t of alpha by 2 n minus 1. So also the question doesn't say it, but they want to do this at 10% significance. Okay. So from the tables, t of alpha by 2, which is 0.05, and n minus 1, which is 19, is 1.73. Tables are from whatever computer, and so this this value is, so let's compare 0.78 and 1.73. This value is less than this, so we should accept. So this value is less than this value, so we should accept. And this we should accept. Equivalently, let me just do this in terms of the p-value. The p-value is the probability that T19, let me say. So T19, okay, let me not do that. So the probability that a t random variable with 19 degrees of freedom in absolute value is greater than 0.78, the statistic that we calculated, which is, this is absolute value, the t distribution is symmetric, so this is twice the probability that t19 is greater than 0.78, which turns out to be 0.446, and that is greater than 0.1. So again we should accept. Okay. And let me just talk about the one-sided test. For the one-sided test, we test at significance level alpha. I'll just write it in one direction, you can see it. You should accept h naught if square root of n by s x bar minus mu naught is less than or equal to t alpha n minus 1, and reject this is greater than t alpha. So again, this is the same issue, and you can compare with this chapter where we had t alpha by 2n minus 1 for the two-sided test, and for the ones, oh, I don't have it here, but okay, so, but for the one-sided test we have t alpha, just as for the normal case. Okay, so I think I'll stop here. See, there's something in the chat. Is there a question? Okay. Yes. So Aditya has answered Raghuram's or commented on Raghuram's question. Yeah. So thanks, Aditya. All right. So let me stop sharing. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir. I have a question regarding we switched from the point estimator mu is equal to mu naught or mu greater than mu naught being the null and alternative hypotheses, and when we switched to the less than mu naught, we did not consider the type 2 error. Is that because we were is that because it's trivially true that if we reject something based on it being the equal to the greatest value, is it something like that, or is it that we didn't?
No, we did do the type 2 error. Right? So that's what we did today, the first thing we did today. So the type 2 error for the one-sided test is this. Or did we, just a second, so did we do it in the last class? No, so right, so this beta, the OC curve will, sorry about that. So in beginning of today's class, when we calculated this beta mu, this will precisely give us the probability of a type 2 error. Okay.
So we used the same test to achieve significance level alpha.
No, we just used it to confirm that our test works in the same way. So, but you know, with, oh sorry, I'm not sharing. Okay, sorry, let me go back to sharing. So when we at the beginning of the today's class, we computed this beta mu, right, which is the probability of accepting h naught given mu is this. So here we are in this argument, we assume that mu is less than or equal to mu naught later on, but this beta mu is precisely the probability of type 2 error. So here you take mu to be greater than mu naught.
Okay, sir. So it's type 2 error. We don't have to check in any case.
Check. Sorry, what do you mean?
I mean, we basically, my intuition, I mean, is this the same thing that comes like, okay, if you toss 10 coins and it comes heads, is that a fair coin? Then we can include the probability of 9 and 10 heads in our argument.
Sorry, say that again. So you toss 10 coins and all come up heads, and your null hypothesis is that the coin is fair, is it?
Yes, sir. 8 come up heads. So somebody asked, what is the probability of something like this happening? So we take 8, 9, and 10 combined for our analysis.
Yes, right.
So this is a similar thing to our intuition when we think something, we group all the lower probability events with it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Right.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. If there are no further questions, let me stop recording.